I lost everything. That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. Her thoughts kept cycling around Daniel and what she had seen earlier had bordered on. Daniel was a hard-working man and known around town for his diligence and kindness. Despite being good-looking and thoughtful, life had not been easy for him after finishing high school in the village. He couldn't afford to attend university. Years later, he moved to Bordelon and opened a small laundry business, offering services to both homes and offices in the area. Daniel woke up early every day, collected clothes from his clients, and spent hours washing, drying, and ironing them. Though the work was tough, he took pride in delivering on time, gaining a reputation as reliable and thorough. The one thing that kept him going was his girlfriend, Hester. They had been together since high school, and her love and support meant the world to him. No matter how tired he was, he would call Hester. Hearing her voice at the end of a long day was his greatest comfort. They often talked about their dreams, imagining a future where they could build a life together. One day, Daniel had a bold idea. He asked Esther to move to Bordelon with him. He believed they could find better opportunities in the city and finally start building their life together. Esther agreed, excited about this new chapter with him. When Esther arrived, Daniel was overjoyed, though their life was humble. Waking up next to her every morning made him feel like the luckiest man in the world. They had made a promise to wait until marriage before becoming intimate, a decision that was important to Esther. Despite the challenges, their bond remained strong. However, life was about to throw Daniel a curveball. One afternoon, Daniel was sitting in front of his shop when he realized he was running late for an important delivery to a wealthy client, Mrs. Sophia. She was one of his best customers, and he had promised to deliver a freshly pressed cloth by 4 p.m. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, threatening rain, but Daniel grabbed the cloth and started running towards our house. Halfway there, the rain poured down heavily, drenching Daniel. He held the bag of clothes tightly, ensuring they stayed dry, and arrived at Sophia's house only a few minutes past 4 p.m. Out of breath, he apologized for the delay, explaining the rain had slowed him down. But Sophia didn't seem to hear his words. Her gaze was locked on Daniel's wet shirt, now clinging to his muscular frame. "Mrs. Sophia, are you listening?" Daniel asked, confused by her silence. Sophia snapped out of her daze and invited him inside, but Daniel politely declined, saying he had to get back to work. As he left, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about him. That night, she lay awake, consumed by thoughts of the handsome laundryman. Sophia's marriage to one of the wealthiest countrymen was nothing to happiness. Her husband was constantly traveling for business trips, leaving her alone and feeling neglected. The next morning, she confided in her best friend, Helen, who was also married to a businessman who lived abroad. They had much in common, but even Helen was taken aback by Sophia's confession. I can't stop thinking about Daniel, Sophia admitted. He came over yesterday, soaking wet, and I just couldn't get him out of my mind. Remember, you're married, Ellen warned. You can't have this thought about another man. But I am so lonely, Sophia argued. Don't you ever feel the same way? Of course I do, Ellen sighed. But that doesn't mean we should act on it. We made vows, Sophia. You need to let go. Sophia nodded, but deep down, she knew she wouldn't. Later that day, she decided to pay Daniel's shop a visit. When Daniel saw Sophia's expensive car pulled up, he was surprised. She explained that she had a special job for him, a home service. Without much hesitation, Daniel locked up his shop and got into the car. As they drove, Daniel noticed they weren't heading to her house. Where are we going, Mrs. Sophia? He asked, puzzled. Call me Sophia, she said softly. We are going to my hotel room. I have some clothes that needs cleaning. When they arrived, Sophia led him into the room and locked the door behind them without warning. She began to undress. What are you doing? Daniel stammered, backing away. I want you, she whispered. Ever since the day in the rain, I haven't been able to think about anything else. Daniel protested. I have a girlfriend, and you have a husband. He's never around, and no one has to know, Sophia replied, pulling out a thick bundle of cash. This can be yours. There is more where that came from. For a moment, Daniel stared at the money, tempted by the large sum. But then he thought of Esther, waiting for him at home. No, he shouted and bolted out of the room. He ran home, heart pounding, only to find Esther sitting outside the apartment, crying. Their belongings were scattered across the yard. The landlord came, she sobbed. He threw us out. We are 3 months behind on rent. What are we going to do, Daniel? Daniel felt a crushing weight of guilt. His laundry business had been struggling and he couldn't keep up with the rent. He tried to reassure Esther that when he checked his savings, he realized it wasn't enough to cover what they owe. The landlord reluctantly agreed to let them stay one more night, on the condition that Daniel paid the full amount by the next day. That night, Daniel lay awake thinking of Sophia and the money she had offered. Where else could he get enough money to keep a roof over their heads? In the morning, with a heavy heart, Daniel called Sophia. I knew you did come around, she said, pleased. She arranged to meet him at the hotel, and though he felt sick with shame, Daniel went through with it. Afterward, Sophia handed him several bundles of cash. I can take care of you, she said. But Daniel had made up his mind. This was a one-time thing, he said firmly. He took the money and left. The next day, Daniel paid the rent and bought some things for the house. When Esther asked where the money came from, Daniel snapped, don't worry about it, just enjoy. But Esther couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. This wasn't the Daniel she knew. Meanwhile, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about their encounter and told Ellen about it all. Ellen, now intrigued, decided to pursue Daniel herself. The next day, she visited his shop and handed him an address. Be there tonight at 8, she said bluntly. You know what I want. Daniel was torn, but as business continued to slow and his financial struggles worsened, he gave in. Soon, he was living a double life, keeping company with both women, accepting their gifts and cash. He stopped going to shop, leaving Esther worried and confused. One day, Esther had enough. "I don't know what you're caught up in," she said, "but I won't be there to watch you destroy yourself." She packed her things and left, going to stay with her friend Anna. There she met Anna's brother, Mark, a kind and honest man. Mark and Esther grew close, and eventually Mark proposed to Esther. Esther, realizing she had found the quality she had once loved in Daniel, she accepted. Months later, Daniel's luck ran out of him. One evening, a black SUV pulled up beside him and he was dragged inside. He found himself face to face with Sophia's furious husband, who had found out about the affair. After a brutal beating, Daniel was left with nothing. His possessions, cars, and dignity were all gone. Desperate and broken, Daniel set out to find Esther, but when he finally found her, she was met with the sight of a happy pregnant woman. She was married to Mark now, and their love was clear. "I am sorry," Daniel whispered, tears in his eyes, but it was too late. Esther had moved on, and Daniel was left to face the consequences of his choices. Thank you for watching. I hope you have learned one or two things from this story. Kindly subscribe to our channel to get more life-changing stories like this and learn from them.